The drawing looked innocent at first. A few crayon lines, a stick figure house, and a small dog drawn beside a smiling girl. But when the K9 unit arrived at the scene, everything about that picture began to shift. The officer noticed how the dog stared at the page, head low, ears twitching, muscles tight. No one understood why, not yet. But something about that drawing pulled the air out of the room. Within hours, what started as a routine welfare check would spiral into one of the quietest, most haunting discoveries the department had ever seen. Here is the full story. But before we jump in, one click can change everything for you here. Hit like, subscribe, and let us see how deep this story really goes. Rain had started to fall across the neighborhood when Officer Hale pulled up beside the small suburban house. The call had come from a concerned neighbor who had not seen the family next door in days. The front yard was still. A forgotten tricycle lay on its side, the seat glistening with rain. Inside the cruiser, K9 Rex sat upright, his eyes tracking every window, every movement. As Hale stepped out, Rex gave a low growl. It was not aggression, it was focus. The front door was slightly open, only a few inches, swaying in the wind. Hale called in a quick status report, then moved forward, flashlight cutting through the dim interior. Inside, the air was thick with that heavy stillness that follows absence. A mug sat half full on the kitchen counter. Children's drawings were pinned to the refrigerator, bright colors, uneven lines, cheerful scenes that somehow felt wrong in the silence. Rex began to pace near the dining table. His nose brushed against a sheet of paper lying on the floor, a child's drawing that had slipped from a folder. He stopped moving, his head tilted. Then a low bark, short, deliberate, almost like a signal. Hale knelt to look. The drawing showed the same house they were standing in, but behind it, scrawled in dark crayon, was a black shape that looked like a hole in the ground. Next to it was a figure, small, hunched, holding something red. Rex growled again, louder this time, eyes fixed on the paper as if it were alive. Hale took a slow breath, unease crawling up his neck. Something about that black spot in the drawing felt deliberate, too real. He clipped Rex's lead and gave the quiet signal to search. The dog darted straight toward the back of the house. Not random, not curious, certain. Outside, rain deepened to a steady drum. Rex ran to the far end of the yard, nose pressed to the muddy ground, circling a patch near the old shed. He barked sharply, once, twice, and began digging. Hale felt his chest tighten. There was nothing visible at first, only soil, wet and dark. Then Rex froze, head low, body trembling. Hale followed his gaze and saw it, something pale buried beneath the surface. A small piece of cloth, pink, patterned and unmistakably part of a child's dress. Hale radioed for backup, his voice tight. Rex stayed locked in place, eyes fixed on the ground, waiting for the others. But when the second unit arrived, Rex turned his head toward the house again, staring back at the refrigerator, at the other drawings pinned there, as if the first clue was only the beginning. By the time additional officers arrived, the backyard was sealed off under tarps and crime scene lights. Rain kept falling, soft and relentless, washing streaks of mud across the uneven ground. Forensics began their quiet work, marking every inch where Rex had alerted. Inside the house, Officer Hale stood near the refrigerator. The drawings stared back at him, simple images that now carried a weight he could not explain. Rex sat beside him, still watching, still tense. One of the pictures caught Hale's eye. It showed the same little girl again, but this time she was holding a red balloon. Next to her stood a tall figure with no face, drawn in gray crayon, standing near a car. And behind them, faintly shaded, another child, smaller, almost erased by heavy lines. A small note in the corner read, "For Daddy." The handwriting trembled slightly as if written in a hurry. Hale felt something in his chest tighten. He knew the family's file, mother, father, and one daughter. No mention of another child. But the drawing suggested otherwise. Rex gave a faint whine, nose brushing the corner of the fridge. A magnet held one more paper underneath, torn, half-burned, its edges curled from heat. It showed a backyard with a shed and a tree marked with an X. Someone had drawn a faint trail leading from the door to that spot. Hale radioed to the team outside, directing them toward the marked tree. Minutes later, an officer called out. There was another disturbed patch of soil nearby. They found a small tin box buried beneath the roots. Inside were only a few items: a toy ring, a folded photo of 2 children, and a hospital wristband. The name printed on it was Maya, with an age that did not match the daughter on record. Hale turned to the wall calendar. The last date circled was 2 weeks ago, marked with a single word, checkup. Rex began pacing again, tail stiff, nose brushing along the hallway floor. He stopped near a closed door at the end. Hale pushed it open carefully. Inside was a small bedroom, pink curtains, toys still arranged neatly, but something about the space felt untouched, as if frozen in time. Rex sniffed near the bed, then looked up toward the ceiling corner. A faint smell, something chemical, hung in the air. On the desk was another drawing. The same house, same yard, but this time no people were drawn at all. Only a small window, blacked out completely in thick crayon. Underneath, written in uneven letters, were the words, "He comes when it rains." Hale stared at it, unsure what to feel: fear, confusion, or disbelief. Rex pressed his paw against the paper, whining again. Every instinct in him said this house had more to tell. When the forensics team returned inside, Hale handed over the photo and hospital band. They ran the name through missing persons records. Minutes later, confirmation came. There had indeed been another child in this family, reported missing over a year ago. The parents had never spoken about it. The file had been closed as an unresolved case after the family relocated. And now a second disappearance, same address, same pattern. Outside, Rex suddenly barked sharply again. Not at the ground, not at the trees, but toward the dark window on the second floor. His body tensed. The lights inside flickered once, then went out completely. Every officer froze. For a long moment, the house stood silent under the rain. Then, from the second floor, a faint thud echoed, deliberate and heavy. Hale raised his flashlight, beam trembling slightly as he aimed it upward. Rex growled low, ready to move. Something or someone was still inside that house. Officers fanned out across the hallway, boots heavy against the damp wooden floor. The upper level of the house was dark except for the weak glow from Hale's flashlight bouncing off the walls. Rex led the way, nose low, every muscle rigid. The sound of the rain outside seemed distant now, muffled under the weight of silence. The thud had come from the far end of the hall. A door stood half open, revealing a thin line of shadowed light from within. Hale's heart thumped in rhythm with Rex's steady breathing. The room looked like an office, stacks of boxes, papers, and old photos scattered across the floor. Rex froze near a filing cabinet and began scratching at the bottom drawer. Hale knelt, pulling it open slowly. Inside were sealed folders marked with hospital records, prescription notes, and insurance forms, all under the father's name. One page stood out, a therapy report with the words trauma response following loss of sibling. Another page listed multiple therapy appointments for Maya and her sister Lena. Lena, the girl who had drawn those pictures. The air seemed to grow colder. Hale realized the second disappearance had likely been tied to something much older, something the family had never fully faced. Rex whined softly, then turned toward the closet door. He pawed at the floor again. Hale opened it slowly, revealing another small box covered in dust. Inside lay a stack of more drawings, these far darker than the ones downstairs, children drawn with blank eyes, a man standing beside them, his hands colored in red, and at the bottom a final piece of paper, a rough sketch of the backyard. The same hole Rex had found, only this time there were 2 shapes drawn beneath the ground. Hale's throat tightened. He stepped back, staring at Rex, who stood motionless, nose pointed toward the window. Outside, rainwater streamed down the glass, distorting the world beyond. But through that distortion, Hale saw something. Faint movement near the shed. He signaled the team below to surround the area. Rex lunged forward the moment the back door opened. He sprinted into the yard, straight toward the same muddy patch, circling it twice before barking sharply. Then he stopped. His head turned toward the shed door, nose pressed against the wood. The lock was rusted but recently broken. Hale pushed it open and the smell hit first. Damp soil, chemicals, and decay. Inside was a narrow workbench lined with tools, and pinned above it photos. Dozens of photos. Each one showing the same family, the same smiling faces except for one detail. The father's expression never changed. Always staring straight at the camera. Always unsmiling. Among them, a recent picture taken just days ago. It showed Lena holding the same drawing Rex had found earlier, standing beside her father. Only now her eyes looked hollow. Hale felt the realization form slowly like ice. The missing child, Maya, had never been abducted by someone outside the home. The pattern, the secrecy, the therapy sessions, it all pointed inward. Rex barked again, this time toward a dark shape near the floor. A hatch. Hale knelt, pried it open, and a staircase descended into the earth. Cool air rose from below, the faint smell of bleach. Flashlights illuminated the narrow space beneath a small room with concrete walls, and in the center a child's bed. On the pillow lay another crayon drawing, a girl and a dog standing in sunlight. But behind them, drawn faintly in black, was the outline of a figure holding a shovel. Hale stood frozen, unable to speak. Rex pressed forward, sniffing the air, tail stiff with unease. Something inside this place had ended long before the rain began. And as they stepped back toward the light, Hale saw another folder on the table above the hatch. Its label read, Therapy Continuation, Lena. The last page dated only 2 days before the call came in. The case had turned. It was no longer about a missing person. It was about what had been hidden in plain sight and who had chosen to stay silent. As the sirens drew closer, Rex looked up toward the open window again, ears twitching. Something out there was still unresolved, something that had not yet come to light. By dawn, the house was sealed off with yellow tape. Rain had stopped, leaving only the soft echo of dripping water through the broken gutters. Rex sat near the porch, his fur-soaked eyes fixed on the rising light. The silence carried its own heaviness now, the kind that comes only after something has been uncovered. Forensics worked through the night. Beneath the backyard soil, they had found 2 shallow graves. One held the remains of the missing child, Maya. The other contained fragments of evidence, burned photographs, melted toys, and a set of keys belonging to the father. Inside the underground room, investigators found more drawings, dozens of them, each one more haunting than the last. They chronicled the family's life over time, from cheerful beginnings to a slow descent into fear. The final few drawings were darker, scrawled with black lines as if the child was trying to warn someone. Hale stood beside the chief examiner, the folder still open in his hands. The therapy records painted a grim picture, sessions describing violent temper, suppressed guilt, and unprocessed loss. It appeared the father had broken after Maya's accidental death during a storm 2 years earlier. He had buried her himself, told no one, and spiraled into silence. But his grief had turned obsessive, and when the guilt grew too heavy, the truth followed him. Rex had sensed it from the start, through scent, through energy, through something human eyes never could. When Hale walked back toward the yard, the early light touched the spot where Rex had first dug, the same patch from the girl's drawing. The connection was undeniable. Every line she had drawn was a quiet cry for help. And yet the most haunting part was what they found beside the bed in the basement. A framed picture of Maya holding Rex as a puppy. It meant the dog had once belonged to the family, transferred later to the department after the tragedy, trained as a K9, and then, by pure coincidence, assigned to this case. Fate had brought him back to finish what he could not understand but had never forgotten. Hale watched Rex sniff the grass one last time, circling the same spot, as if saying goodbye. The officers stood silently. Even the chief removed his cap. Later that week, the department held a quiet ceremony at headquarters. Rex received a medal for exceptional instinct and service beyond protocol. No fanfare, no press. Just the quiet acknowledgement of a truth only a few could comprehend. When the medal was placed on his collar, Rex did not move. He just looked up at Hale, eyes calm, steady, as if the weight of everything had finally settled. The final report closed the case under domestic tragedy uncovered by K-9 unit. But among the officers who had been there that night, the memory lingered differently. They spoke less about what was found and more about how it was found. Because sometimes truth does not come from words or confession. Sometimes it comes from a silent instinct that refuses to look away. As the station lights dimmed and Rex lay near the door, Hale glanced at the photograph pinned on the board, the girl's last drawing, the same one that had started it all. It now hung framed under a small tag that read Case 47, the drawing that spoke first. Outside, thunder rolled faintly again in the distance. Rex lifted his head, alert but calm. Another storm coming, another case waiting somewhere out there. And in that quiet moment, Hale realized something simple, yet absolute. The dog was never just following orders, he was following memory. Some stories never really end, they just leave quiet echoes that wait to be found again. Rex's instinct brought truth to light this time, but somewhere out there another silence is hiding something just as deep. Stay close, the next story may begin with one small sound you never saw coming. If you felt this one, subscribe and stay, you will want to be here when the next case breaks.